And I guess to me, there's a question that maybe we should talk through about, is our job to advise or cajole them to do it better? Or is there something different that we need to do? Do you get what I'm saying? I think it comes up all the time. I found it over and over again. When I talk about what I've posed, the Democrats are fighting on their interests, we need to fight on our interests. And it gets translated constantly into, how do we give better advice to the Democrats? And so I'm throwing this to you.
Yeah, well, look, I think that I think I'd answer it like this. If you look at the evidence, not just the evidence that's presented in the trial, but if you look at the evidence of how the Democrats have been, first of their reluctance to impeach all this time, they're not calling to account. Look, just the denial of the right to asylum in the way that they're doing is a violation of international law. It's also a violation of it is a high crime and misdemeanor. It's an abuse of power against the people. There's lots of things like that this regime has done. What it's done to the environment is a crime against humanity. I mean, the Paris Accord was weak, but it was an accord, and there were goals in it. All the things that he's done are things that should have been part of, if you want to go at it that way. So that the whole way this has been carried forth by the Democrats should tell you that they're not serious about it. That's not what they're concerned with. Even the Mueller report, you know, the Attorney General, who's like a world-class fascist. This is a guy who calls for theocratic law in America. If you don't think this is fascist, you need to look at that, and you need to look at you know, the film Trump, Pence Must Go by Bob Avakian, where he goes into some of this stuff on this theocracy that these fascists, Christian fascists want. But anyway, the point is, Barr went and put out a decision before it came out on the Mueller report. But what did the Democrats do? Almost nothing about it. In fact, there was a struggle just 2 nights ago in Nancy Pelosi's office, reportedly, that some of the Democrats in Congress wanted to actually have an article of impeachment around that Mueller, the evidence of the Mueller report and the collusion with the Russians. But a lot of the others said, no, we don't want to touch that. They have, and then they go and stage this insanity today of absolutely sitting down and giving Trump 2, I think actually 3 victories in his policies. So they're telling you right now they're not going to prosecute this fully. So we do not need to try to give them advice. They don't want your advice, okay? They don't care what you think, except insofar as that you go into the voting booth and vote for them. And you'll see what they'll do with this election, like they do with every election. In fact, I was reading a Facebook post by a very famous and well-known, somebody I've met, playwright, director, actor, who said, "I'm really upset here because I think what's going to happen is," he's a Bernie supporter, they're going to trash Bernie, they're going to get rid of Elizabeth Warren, and I'm going to hold my nose and vote for whoever they nominate, and that's what I'm going to have to do, and that's what we're all going to have to do. So right there, he's already gets the script. He's been told that you're not going to actually get the kind of justice that this person stands for in his art and his work and in his heart. But he's got that realpolitik is all that's possible is what's already going on, and these people run the show. But what's crazy about all this is that all around the world, people have been showing you there's another way to go. It's not like it's a mystery. When we started this, people said, "Oh, how could you do that?" We were pointing back to Egypt 5 years ago, but now this is happening everywhere. I think it happened in India 2 days ago, the streets filled with people. This is not, but we've got to go shake up the American people and shake up the political organizations who do want to struggle, who themselves are putting everything into the election, and see that as the sole way to redress this. I've got to say, there's a long way between here and January 2021. And as we've posed before, if you will not get out into the streets now, what will you do if Trump is reelected, or if he loses by a small majority in the electoral college and claims that it was rigged and refuses to leave office and tries to take it to the courts, which are controlled by who? the fascist now. It's got a majority in the Supreme Court. Pretty ironclad. So you see that people are not paying attention to the actual stakes of this. So I think maybe we have time for one more question from here.
Yeah, last question.
Yes.
I wanted to ask if you could bring it up just how dangerous this actual impeachment is coming up, because even if Trump is impeached and voted out, then the seat goes to Mike Pence. And Mike Pence, in a way, on the low, is a lot more dangerous than Trump. So can you please speak to the movement on why it is important that we still get out in the streets and not rely on that?
Right. So let me see if I can, because of the sound, I want to repeat the question. We don't have it. This is a very good question. And correct me if I get it a little bit off. One, why is it important to keep doing this? If Trump was impeached and convicted in the Senate, which would mean he'd be driven from office, which I think the questioner understands that's not the likely outcome. But if that could happen because we're out in the streets and he is removed from office, then we get Mike Pence. And Mike Pence is actually in many ways scarier than Trump, or at least as bad, however we look at that question. He's certainly a fascist, a misogynist, a racist. This is a serious thing. I think it's, here's what I think about that concern. I think that in order to get this impeachment to end up in a removal from office under any foreseeable or under the likely circumstances, look, all kinds of things can always happen. There can be other revelations, things that you and I don't know that a bunch of people in the Republican Party want to get rid of him, okay? But under most foreseeable circumstances, the way this would happen is through mass pressure and struggle from below. If that happens, we will be in a stronger position to deal with and demand the impeachment of Mike Pence or the removal of Mike Pence. Let's be clear, Mike Pence was he was in the loop and in the whole, what they are impeaching Trump for. Mike Pence was a part of the whole thing and he's defended the whole thing. But the main thing that would enable us to go against Mike Pence is people would be aroused. One of the problems we're facing now is there hasn't been a victory for the people in a very long time. People are defeated out there. That's one of the differences between America and every place else. People feel very defeated. They feel that they can't win. They have to rely on these people, and the victories they've won are very hollow, very minor. They look, not trying to take away. Let me not get diverted here, but I think that's the essential answer, is that it's not that it's one step at a time, but that you actually go. This is mainly going to come from a serious movement from below, which then you continue your demands. For example, in Hong Kong, they won their first demand several months ago. And they said, well, that's not enough. That's really not what we're going for. So we won all 5 demands. And then just last week, they said, you know what? We don't really want to be a part of China. And this is complicated because the US is in there on the side of the protesters. But this is the kind of thing we have to look at. The other thing about Mike Pence, I think this is a much more strategic Christian fascist. This is a very serious thing. But Mike Pence, while he'll have the backing of a lot of these fascists, he's about as inspiring as a rock. And he does not have the skill. Part of bringing in fascism is you need a demagogue like Trump, like Hitler, like Mussolini, like Duterte in the Philippines. You need somebody who's so outrageous, who's so willfully and blatantly lies and is just the epitome of bluster and entitlement, in a way that I think this is why the Republicans in part are sticking with him. It's not that he's the most brilliant strategist or theorist of Christian fascism or anything, but that he's so much able to break the rules, and they haven't broken enough of the rules. They haven't shattered the structures sufficiently enough yet, which is why we can meet here and call protests. That I think they do need him. If he goes down, we're going to actually be in a stronger situation. Now, if he goes down only because of machinations at the top and everybody goes to sleep, that's where I would agree with you. That's why I got so angry when last summer I think it was Bill Maher said, well, you know, I'll settle for Pence. Why don't they just put Pence in there?
Yeah.
That kind of thinking is foolish, stupid, ignorant of what the actual situation is, and is exactly speaks to your point, which is if it came from just inaction at the top, it would not be good, because I agree with you. People are already asleep. They take a deep snooze at that one, and yet the danger would be every bit as great. So it's a very important question. I think I'm done here, and then now it's back to Sansara.
We have to read this comment.
Okay.
Good point, Andy, about Pence. No.
Okay.
No, it was a good point.
I'll send you a Christmas gift for that comment. So,
yeah,
but
no,
I do
it's-
want.
yeah.
I'm going to leave. This return to what this 14th has to be,
Yeah.
and that I just really do want to say to people in broadly and in Refuse Fascism, when we said that we were going to launch Out Now, look, this isn't a game, okay?
Yeah.
But we are playing to win. We're not just trying to be some kind of movement and get our own following. This is our movement, and this is by the people's movement, and this is SOS's movement. This is Indivisible. This is Move On. This is Bernie. This is AO's. I don't care about all that right now. I'm a revolutionary. I care about building movement for an actual revolution. But right now, we're trying to unite very broadly with people to drive out this regime, okay? And that's what has to happen. And everything else does not get put aside. It should just get joined. We should talk about all that. We should struggle over that. But we have to actually get together to be seeing illusions and delusions. So that's it for me.